Great. Well, we're going to continue our series in Exodus under the title, The God Who Rescues. I just want to read some verses from Exodus chapter 3 this morning, pick it up where we left off last week. If you remember, God appears to Moses in the burning bush, and he says, you know, I've heard my people's cry, I've seen, I've remembered, I care, I'm concerned. And then we get to verse 10 of Moses chapter 3. Let's just read, and we'll read through to the end of the chapter. God says, so now go. I am sending you, Moses, to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you. And this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. Go, assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, appeared to me and said, I have watched over you and have seen what has been done to you in Egypt, and I have promised to bring you up out of your misery in Egypt into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. The elders of Israel will listen to you. Then you and the elders are to go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand compels him. So I will stretch out my hand and strike the Egyptians with all the wonders that I will perform among them. After that, he will let you go. And I will make the Egyptians favorably disposed towards this people, so that when you leave, you will not be empty-handed. Every woman is to ask her neighbor and any woman living in her house for articles of silver and gold and for clothing, which you will put on your sons and daughters, and so you will plunder the Egyptians. We continue the story, and we see the story unfold. 2 questions that Moses asks of God in this passage. 2 questions. Who am I? And who are you, God? And I just want to briefly look at those 2 questions this morning. Firstly, Moses asks, who am I, God? And this question for Moses clearly flows out of a sense of inadequacy. Moses felt ill-equipped and ill-prepared for the job God was asking him to do. And so he says to God, who am I that I should do what you're asking me to do? Have you ever felt like that? I can't do that, God. I don't have what it takes. I'm not up to the task. Choose someone else. And that's basically what Moses is communicating to God when he says, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt? And when we hear that and when we see this unfold, maybe we would have expected God to, in that moment, affirm Moses and try and persuade him that he was the right man for the job. After all, God's providence has arranged for Moses to be trained in Pharaoh's palace with all the wisdom of Egypt for 40 years, and then positioned him in the wilderness to become familiar with all the qualities of a shepherd for a further 40 years. So who could be better prepared to lead Israel out of Egypt than Moses? And maybe we would have expected God to major on that, because Moses clearly had something going for him. But that was not the focus of God's answer. What did God say? When Moses says, who am I? What did God say? I will be with you. I will be with you. You see, the most important thing was not about who Moses was, but who God was. That's always the most important thing. God would say, it doesn't matter whether you feel competent or not. Doesn't matter whether you feel up to the task. What matters is that I will be with you, and I am up to the task. That's what will make the difference. That's what did make the difference, as we will see as we journey through this story. And God was not promising to make Moses into a different man because of the way he felt about himself. He wasn't promising to clothe him with bionic strength so he could go and deal with Pharaoh, or to kind of give him supernaturally some greater kind of personal, social, or diplomatic abilities. Rather, he was calling Moses to a position of faith. He was asking Moses to believe not in himself or his own training or education or abilities or experiences, but to actually believe in and trust in the sufficiency and sovereignty of his God. That was the important thing. And sometimes, perhaps, we ourselves can be waiting and waiting before we will step out to do what we know God wants us to do, because we're wanting to feel competent. We're wanting to feel qualified. We're wanting to feel confident to be able to do it. And so we're waiting for what will never come, because we'll never be ready. But God doesn't want us ready. He just wants us available. He just wants us to trust that He is ready and that He is able to do through us what we cannot do for ourselves. And so your sense of inadequacy and the presence of some fear and the lack of confidence that you feel in relation to what God may be asking or prompting or stirring you to do is likely to always be present. It's going to always be a present reality when we're stepping out for God, because He is constantly calling us to a position of faith where our trust and our hope is in Him and not in ourselves. That's how it should be, I have learned. That's how God likes it, because that keeps us humble and prayerful and dependent upon God and not on ourselves. Let me be honest with you. I'm almost 15 years into this leadership role. And I hoped I would feel a whole lot better about it by now. Waiting for that day. But I don't. I still feel inadequate, unqualified, ill-prepared much of the time. And actually, I am still stepping out of my comfort zone every time I have to front something or lead something or teach something or chair something. I don't feel in and of myself cut out for this. It's daily courage. It's daily faith that keeps me walking obediently in what God has asked me to do. Because Martin would happily let somebody else do it. You know, Martin would happily just stay in the background somewhere. I have to just keep looking to God for the grace I need to keep stepping up and stepping out, and I have to keep trusting Him to work through what He has called and positioned me to do. And every one of us has to do that in whatever context God has placed and positioned us. We will face that, where we have to just trust Him and allow Him to work, even though we feel that sense of inadequacy and fear and lack of confidence much of the time. David Pawson, in his little commentary on Exodus, says, if God calls you to do something and you say, well, I'm a nobody. I'm not the one for this. I can't do this. God may say, I know you're not. I know you can't. That's why I chose you. I'm the one for this, and I'll be with you. And that's what we have to remind ourselves of. And so this morning, if you're wondering, perhaps at the moment, whether to step out for God into something that He has laid on your heart or is prompting you to do, maybe it's to become a cat befriender, as you've listened to David this morning. Maybe it's to offer your time to serve our community in some way in the months ahead, and there's plenty of opportunity for you to do that. Maybe it's to get involved with TLG and to become an early intervention coach. Maybe it's just to step out and pray for somebody, or just to step out and witness to somebody. Whatever it is, if you're sensing that pull, that prompting to do something, but you're worried that you don't have what it takes, welcome to the club. Honestly, you don't have what it takes. And if you think you do, then probably something's wrong there anyway. You don't, but God does. And so just step into whatever it is and trust God to use you, inadequacies and all, and He will. Because that's what God does. Moses moves from asking, "Who am I?" to asking, "Who are you, God? Who are you?" Which is always the better and more important question. It is only in knowing who He is that we can ultimately understand who we are, and therefore are able to live a life of true purpose and peace. When we know who He is. If you don't know who God is, then it is going to be even harder for you to step out into what He's asking you to do. Because the more you know Him, the more you'll trust Him. The more you understand how He works and see where He works. Let me just read those verses from verse 13 to 15 again. Moses says to God, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them," so he isn't committed yet, has he? He says, "Suppose I do go, God. It's like, and I say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is His name? Then what shall I tell them?" God said to Moses, "I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you." God also said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, the Lord, Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation." And here in Exodus chapter 3, we encounter God revealing His name to Moses, but not just for Moses' benefit, but for the benefit of every generation to come, which includes us. "This is my name forever," God says. "I am who I am." This is what you are to say to the Israelites. "I am has sent me to you." Now, think about it. If I introduce myself, I have to reference something extra, something external to identify myself. I can't just announce, "I am is here." I can't do. Only God can do that. Only God can do that. And that, by the way, is why the Jews tried to stone Jesus when He said to them in dialogue, before Abraham was born, "I am." And then they picked up stones to stone Him because they knew in that moment He was claiming to be God, which we know to be true, but they did not want to believe. It was blasphemy. But when people ask me who I am, I can't just say, "I am." I have to say, "I am," and add something. "I am Martin. I'm a Coleman. I'm the son of Chris and Rachel." I have to add something else that helps identify me, helps define me. I am Martin Coleman. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a pastor. I'm a middle-aged man with short legs and grey hair. Whatever you want to say. But I add something. But God's name draws its ultimate meaning from itself. "I am who I am," God says. "I am self-defining." God's very being is not defined by anything or anyone outside of Himself, but is defined by His own being, because there is no one beyond God. There is no one above God. There is no one greater than God who can define Him or who He has to refer to in order to define Himself. "I am who I am." And of course, that doesn't mean that God doesn't have many other names that help us understand the nature of His character and being, but ultimately God is who He is in Himself. "I am who I am. I will be who I will be." God is and forever will be. He is eternal and unchanging, self-existent, self-sufficient, self-dependent, self-defined. And in fact, the reality of His name is what's being revealed in the burning bush. As He's communicating to Moses, the burning bush, which kept burning all by itself, without need of external fuel to feed it, and without ever being extinguished. Self-sufficient. "I am who I am." And this is the God we worship. This is Him, the all-sufficient, self-existing, unchanging, uncreated, eternal Lord. And when we know who God is, it puts everything else into proper perspective. Moses needs to know who God is, and he especially needs to know who God is in contrast to Pharaoh, whom God is calling him to confront. I need to know who you are, God. Because Pharaoh will make claims. Pharaoh can say, I am Pharaoh. I'm the king of Egypt. I'm the most powerful ruler of all the kingdoms of the earth. He can even say, I am a god, which is what he believed and the Egyptians believed. And all that some of it may be true, all of it may appear true from a human perspective, but God stands over and above all of those claims. For God is the great I am. And God is the Lord over Pharaoh, and he's Lord over Egypt, and Lord over every other idol, every other idea that would seek to set itself up as a God. He is Lord. God rules and reigns. God is unmoved and undeterred and unchanged in his character and in his purposes, even in the face of the bold voices and the proud claims of those that he has created. He is the unchanging one. And Pharaoh and his self-made gods are no match for Yahweh, the Lord of all. And of course, we know the story, and we will see that. And what was important for Moses to know is important for us. We need to know God's name. We need to understand the full revelation of who God is so that we can worship and serve him rightly. And not only that, but that we can rest. We can rest in his unchanging, unrivaled, incomparable name. He is the Lord. That's where I find my identity. That's where I find my purpose. That's where I find my peace. That's where I find my rest in him. Not by looking within, but looking to him. And we need that in a world of uncertainty and anxiety, where kings and kingdoms come and go, where nature and nations are in turmoil. Everywhere we look, where everything is so transitory and so temporary, where nothing and no one, it seems, can be relied upon. It's good to know, in the midst of all of that, that there is a God who sits enthroned over it all. The only dependable name in all the world and all of history. The one who is not given to change. The one who's not flapping about, wondering what he's going to do next or what his next move should be. But the one who has always been and will always be the Lord of glory. The one in whom our lives find their peace and purpose. Find their hope and security. Find their identity and their destiny. That is the name that we need to know. I am who I am, God says. This is my name forever. My ever dependable name. The name you shall call me from generation to generation. And so if you want to know who you are, then you need to meditate on who he is. And then trust in the name that is above every other name. Let's pray.